Welcome to O-Talkin' with Dave. Put your hands together for the pastor of positivity whose glass is always at least half full. Here's Dave.
Hey, how we doing out there? I hope you're doing great. I am top shelf. Top shelf. Living the dream. Oh, I've been getting a lot of discussion, and I've around some people recently that crack me up. They crack me up with their paranoia. And I know people have been that way in the past. I grew up with people like that. That are just so paranoid. I mean, if they can't go to a football game because they think that they're in the huddle talking about them, it's like, I'm not paranoid. I just think everybody's against me. And I don't, honestly, the whole AI conversation, people are paranoid. I believe, I'm not worried about people getting my information because I assume they already have it. Is that a defeatist? Or is it realistic? I don't know, but I don't worry about it. I'm not paranoid about it. Some people, every little thing, something they don't understand, they get paranoid about it. They think the GPS voice is sounding a little judgmental. Yeah, they don't. Certain times they don't use a credit card or, because they don't want people tracking them yet. They're being tracked. They got a phone they deal with all the time. They got it. Some of the paranoia doesn't make sense. I know people that if the barista spells their name wrong on the side of their coffee cup, that means something. Yeah, it means someone didn't speak legibly, or maybe someone is a product of public education. I don't know. But trust issues, they're out there too. I mean, we just talked about trust and all of that. But I've heard people say, don't leave voicemails. That's evidence. That's evidence. Oh, my goodness. You call it paranoia. I call it being ahead of the ambush. That's a rough way to live, I believe. And I've got friends, close friends, who live in fear of their information. I'm not talking about identity being stolen, but they live in fear of Big Brother. I don't. However, I want to talk about it because I think in some situations, paranoia can be good. A certain degree of paranoia can be good. That's why I call it constructive paranoia. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about just the real human side of paranoia. What's because it's crippling to some people. So some of the negative feelings that come with paranoia, I think it's fear. That sense of some sort of danger or threat. That's not good. Many times though, when it's paranoia, it's that threat, a danger, when there's not really any clear evidence. It's more of a suspicion. But I've seen it dominate somebody's emotional state. And it can lead to anxiety. I mean, if someone thinks that someone's plotting against them, I've seen it as I hate to say frivolous. I'm going to say frivolous. As frivolous as gossip. Oh, they're all talking about me. Oh, to at work. They're out to get me. That type of thing. It can be emotional, but without clear evidence, I think, it can just be considered paranoia. So you got fear, and then it leads to a distrust. I don't trust it. I can't rely on anybody. And that really creates a tough emotional state. You isolate yourself. It affects other relationships. I really don't trust that. I see that paranoid person like, they're out to get me. I can't trust anybody. Yeah, that's isolation, which leads, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You act like they're all out to get you. You isolate yourself. It makes them talk about what's up with this dude. Now they're talking about you. Oh, now I have evidence. They are out to get me. vicious circle. Then, of course, the frustration that comes in. If I can't prove it, you're saying, oh, Dave, they're not out to get you. You have no evidence. Well, I can't prove it, or I can't really disprove my perception. I'm stuck in the middle here. I'm stuck. I'm emotional. I'm misunderstood. I'm constantly on the edge. I'm freaking out here, man. They're still misspelling my name on my cup. Well, maybe you should cut down on the caffeine. But it's frustrating. I don't mean to make light of it. Some of you out there struggling with this, or I wouldn't be doing this. But all of that isolation and frustration, and your behavior is getting kind of crazy. Well, now you're getting lonely. I hate that. I don't want people to be lonely. Paranoia pushes people to withdraw because they don't trust anybody. They're scared. They doubt your intentions, even if they're noble. And, okay, that's isolation. And you get lonely over time. And after a while, you're going to get angry. You're going to resent things. The belief that other people are plotting against you, or judging you, or planning harm. All right, maybe they are, but you don't have any proof. It's caused changes in behavior. Now you're isolated. And if people don't believe you, what do you think? Oh, you're in on it. Man, this is horrible. This is horrible. I go back to, let's lighten it up a little bit. I go back to my parents. I mean, I've said it. We were the last people to have some of the basic essentials of life. My dad was scared of microwaves. Oh, there's something about it. I think, I'm putting words in his mouth. I don't know if he thought it was a government experiment, but I don't know about that technology. Dad, come on. We're the last ones to get one. Well, we may be the only ones to survive. Caller ID. Remember those boxes when they first came out? A lot of you may not remember a time when the phone would ring and you would pick up the phone and you didn't know who it was. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine the paranoia that would be involved if you don't know who it is? Oh, don't answer. No, we answered the phone. We didn't ring that much. It was great. Hey, touch with the outside world, in touch with people with microwave ovens. And then when we were one of the last to get that caller ID box, not because it cost an extra 75 cents a month. It's like, oh, that's how they get you. That's how they're tapping in. Oh, it's pulling information. What information? It's a telephone line. We didn't have a computer. We didn't have, my goodness, I think we didn't have central heat in the air. What are they pulling from the O'Connor household? Still, hey, that's how they get you. How they get what? That was always his thing. Oh, no, that's how they get you. Sorry, Dad. I feel like I'm picking on you. But it's got to be a horrible feeling to be crippled with paranoia. So, some people are paranoid and they really don't call it that, or they don't realize it's severe. So what I want to talk about today is, and I'm talking about the severe stuff, but I think it's a slippery slope. You're somewhat paranoid, which is good, and we'll talk to that. But how do you go from being somewhat paranoid to crippled with paranoia? And I think you shift into that. It's a process. So one of the things that you could recognize that, okay, in yourself or in others, when you start overinterpreting some casual comments, someone subtly says something offhand. Maybe it's a joke. Maybe it's it's a little constructive criticism, or I don't know, someone's sarcastic. Once you start taking that more as a threat or an insult, or they didn't mean that as a joke. Okay, well, sometimes they don't. However, when you're over-interpreting a casual remark, all right, your paranoia may be kicking it up a notch. If you are reluctant to share what would be considered normal information, just basic stuff, your hobbies, where you work, what month were you born, It may be in general conversation, but hold on. Why do they need to know that? Well, I don't know. What's your favorite color? Some of the common stuff. In the South, one thing that we do, and we make fun of it now that we don't live there, but you go back and immediately they start saying, "Oh, Connor, are you kin to so-and-so?" They're not trying to fill out a family tree to give to the FBI. It's just part of relating. They may want to know, hey, maybe I know you. Maybe we can find some commonality. There's no need to be paranoid about that, but I can see how someone that was on the edge could be very leery of that. Then if you notice you or someone else being very hyper aware of somebody else's behavior, you watch people. You act like maybe you watch too many Bourne movies, Bourne Identity, and you start reading things in, and then you take it personally, like, oh, they usually say this, but they said that. What are they hiding? They're hiding their feelings. What else are they hiding? Oh, can I trust this person? You're analyzing people's tones or their body language a little more. Yeah. Or they always respond to my text immediately. What's that delay about? Oh, I wonder if they're sending my text to somebody else and they're talking about how they respond. See the slippery slope? And I think the overabundance of communication styles and techniques and devices, if you're paranoid, this can send you into a tizzy, which is a very technical term for extreme paraphernalia with your paranoia. And then, dealing with the trust side of things. Some people struggle to let other people help them make decisions. Usually you'd ask, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? Have you done that before? I'm thinking about going so-and-so on vacation. Have you been there? And getting information like that. When you become more paranoid, unhealthy paranoia, well, you keep everything in. You don't ask those because you're having to give information out. Oh, you're going there? When are you going? Oh, that might just be what time of year, because it rains there a lot during that time of year, or if it's hot there that time of year. No, they're asking a lot of questions. I don't know. Maybe you need some advice. So that, if you're fearing sabotage or exploitation, something like that, when you didn't used to, go out and eat. Hey, what's a good, we're looking for this. Where's a good Mexican restaurant in the area? Oh, why is he asking that? Why is he call it Mexican? What's up with this? Calm down. But anyway, once you're in it, it's tough. So you hold back on that information. You don't share as much. Then go back to the earlier part, isolation, non-inclusion. And then, if you have an unusual focus on privacy, it could be, I don't know. I see it all the time. If you go in an Airbnb or you go in a hotel, do this. Somebody may be surveilling you. Here's ways to, cover up possible webcams or microphones or detect them, and detecting technology and all that. If you get caught up in that, if you have to change your password 4 times a day because you're afraid somebody's taking it, either you've got something to hide or you may be edging toward being overly paranoid. You might know. So there's some positive impacts, and that's what I want to get to. 5 ways paranoia, when managed constructively, can have a positive impact. Okay, so we're not talking about the crazy, over-the-top paranoia now. We're talking about, all right, I'm going to watch my back, and I'm going to keep a check, but I'm still going to live my life and have a good time, all right? So some of the some of the traits of positive paranoia would be, being aware of risk. You need to be aware of risk. You don't need to be naive. Focused on someone, on being alert, of real dangers and real threats. That's good. I took some classes before I started working in Mexico about street smarts, and here's what you do. Protecting your computer, doing some things around that with virus protection, just basic stuff around. Don't click on these links because that's how a virus gets in there. Being aware of this stuff and being, vigilant about those risks. That's a degree of paranoia that's healthy. Also, personal boundaries. I talk about boundaries all the time. Most of our boundaries that I talk about is the ones you need to set for yourself. But also having that, encouraging someone to be more, their relationships, how not to be manipulated. I talk about toxic people and all that, but paying closer attention to red flags. Many times, others can see them when you can't see it yourself. So when you learn these things, it's a great way to be more aware of things, whether it's people and scams and something that's happening. That's not being overly paranoid. It's paying attention to boundaries. It's setting and paying attention to those, which is a good thing. That's healthy. Also, secrecy, privacy. I don't feel like I have a lot to hide. However, there are people that take advantages of a lack of security. I know people that are and especially companies. I've been involved in a couple of companies who had ransomware, and they could have really been almost put out of business. But they invest in that, and people know that it's a whole industry. But watching privacy and security, I talked to it a second ago around how to protect your information, and in this regard, I am talking about identity theft. Stealing your information, not only to shut you down, but also to take your money or take your security or things like that. I've been a victim of that before. I always get mad when I'm traveling and they cut my credit card off again. Right? Well, you know what? It used to bother me a lot more before I actually had it happen to where I was a victim. And you feel vulnerable. And so there's a certain degree of paranoia that makes your private, your privacy or especially your security. It's much more involved when you're dealing with the security of, your family. That's very important. Not just financially, but okay, what vulnerabilities exist here with proof, and how can I make sure that we're secure? That is paranoia, but it's a healthy degree of paranoia. There are bad characters out there. And then, I don't know, we see a lot of film out there on TV and everything else. Paranoia can drive your imagination crazy. That what if, and that's where a lot of I think the realistic threat is not there. However, some of this is a good alert. I know it's a line between the true crime shows, I don't know, what are some others, Forensic Files, all of these real crime shows, and the crime dramas. I think the crime drama sends it over the edge. It may have a good message, but they need to have more of a flair and bring you in. I can promise you those labs aren't that elaborate with all the glass and the lighting and all the please. True crime is not quite that glamorous. However, some of the warnings that it puts out, that's good. Everything is not an emergency. Everything is not an emergency. However, some of those narratives help you uncover maybe some vulnerabilities. I immediately go to, my wife and my daughter. Let's be street smart. You need to be paranoid to the point to where you're safe, but also use it to solve problems. use it to prevent situations. I think that's very, very healthy and constructive paranoia. And then in that and along those lines, using paranoia to anticipate worst case scenarios. And I don't like doing that. I like to be positive, but when we're dealing with health and security, I think sometimes can be constructive unless you're crippled by it. Instead of not going on a trip at all because you're paranoid, okay, how do we prepare for it? How can we be more strategic in our thinking? My son and I go to some areas where, it could be questionable as to safety. However, we prepare properly. We're a bit street smart, and we get in with that crowd, and we're one of them. So we're not even paranoid. Where if we brought someone that's not familiar, it would be rough. And I can think of a couple of examples. I would tell them, but it happened years ago, and the parents of those boys would probably hunt me down because they're more paranoid than I am. But it's, there are whole industries around this. Emergency management, contingencies, all these things in business. They're plans that kick into place should something happen. Well, there's some degree of paranoia there. It causes you to plan. I think personally we should do the same thing. Okay? We do this to prevent this from happening. Then also we do this in case this happens. And a lot of my mind goes to, I travel a ton. I probably am less paranoid when I travel alone than if I have my family with me. I think that's only natural. So a certain degree of paranoia can be constructive. So when you're looking at, we'll call it a healthy suspicion, I think there's the way to look at it because, I went kind of crazy at the beginning painting a picture of these crazy paranoid isolationists. Well, I think there's some ways to, I've talked about signs to where you may be becoming that, and it's a slippery slope. Well, what are some things you do? What are some checks and balances along the way? Well, one, check the evidence. We say being paranoid is when you're going nuts and there's no evidence of this. Well, check it. What actual evidence do I have? Am I relying on feelings or assumptions or something somebody else said? Look at the facts, look at patterns, look at some sort of consistent behavior over time. Try to bring it down to reality and then check the evidence. It may be there. Yeah. And so once you find it, it's okay. All right. It can't be based on emotion. It can't be based on third party. Check it out for yourself. Check it out for yourself. And then there's I've talked about the art of the pause or stay calm. I've said that. Well, in this regard, use the 24-hour rule. If you're suspicious and something's coming up, wait a day. And if your emotions are such that you can wait a day, because usually, if there's clear danger, act. I mean, obviously there's a problem here, you got to act. But if it's just suspicions, usually you separate over 24 hours, and there's nothing magical about 24 hours, but that emotion will wane. If it is emotion. If it's real, I mean, you got it. And and some people have intuition or call it a spider sense or whatever. If once you wait a day, all right, then you may want to act, but give it a little time unless you're in clear and present danger. That takes the drama and the emotion out of it. It will also take the drama and the emotion out of, hopefully, those pushing you, if it's not just you. Okay? Then test it. If you're unsure about something, don't just assume it. If you're unsure about somebody's trustworthiness or are they up to something, test it. Share something minor. Give them something small to do. Watch their behavior. This is, of course, this is not in a situation where it's clear present danger, but if you don't trust somebody and you think they may be up to something, I can think of scenarios at work. We've done this many times where, you give somebody a small dose of something just to see if something happens, and when something happens, okay, there you go. Nobody got hurt, but we found out a lot of information. Don't just assume they're good or bad based on something else. Give it a little test. Trust them with something minor. We used to do that with even in teenagers. Parents are smart enough to give you little nuggets of things to find out who your friends really are. And then I think you need to look at your triggers. Notice situations and behaviors that make you suspicious. Is there a pattern there? Is it about a specific person, or is it things that stem from a specific experience or happening in the past? What am I suspicious about? Why am I suspicious about that? What triggers these things? Is it about what part about me? Is there a pattern that triggers? Is it about my performance? Is it about my athletic ability? Is it about my wicked good looks? Is it about, what is that? Or is it a certain person who seems to always do it? Is it always women? Is it always men? What is it? But once you look at your triggers, then sometimes maybe you can see a pattern that it's more you than them. Yeah. And then you've got, I'd say build a rating and this is not sophisticated, but like a trust scale. Don't think of people either 100% trustworthy or 100% suspicious. Either they love me or they hate me. People usually don't operate that way, I can trust, and what I mean by this is I can trust them with the small stuff, but I'm not going to trust them with something. If they screw it up, then all is lost. I think that's the way we need to do anyway. However, especially with someone, it's almost like what I said, test them earlier. Yeah, let's just it's not all or nothing always. And I think if you are an all or nothing person, maybe that paranoia has got to an unhealthy level. I think so. If you're not sure you can trust them, well, don't tell them any very private secrets yet. Some people, if you can't trust them, I know people who have used it to get the word out. The best way to get the word out is to tell them, don't tell anybody. Well, you can use that. That's not paranoia. That's strategic. But everything's not all or nothing. Yeah, I tend to err toward the positive. If you hear me review a restaurant, you're probably going to hear more positive than negative. And then other people, they'll pick that one negative and trash the whole place. Yeah, I'm not that way with people or with situations. So, and this last one is a little tough if you're paranoid. If you're overly paranoid. But ask somebody else. You got to have somebody you trust. Let them know, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Am I crazy? How many times have you said or heard this? I may be crazy, but you may think I'm crazy, but run it by somebody else. Especially before you act or do something ridiculous. This can help. That echo chamber sometimes helps you, when you say it out loud rather than think it. It's like, what was I thinking? But that person, they can maybe confirm it. Oh, yeah, I've been seeing the same thing. What is going on there? But it keeps you from isolating, which is very important. You don't want to isolate because in our minds, we say and do things that a lot of times unrestrained. It's a scary place. My mind is a scary place. Yeah. So, again, if you got a checklist, and it's important to have checklists in life, I believe, but it's just the balance of healthy paranoia versus, or constructive paranoia versus something else. Look at the evidence. Maybe, is there real evidence here? Is this a repeated event? Is there a pattern going on here? Am I assuming some intent that's not really there? Yeah, they're doing it. And yeah, there's a bit of a pattern, but they're not doing it to hurt me. It's not focused at me or my family. It's just the way they are. Just the way they are. And then, if it was somebody else and they were being treated this way, looking at it almost like third party, would I advise them about this? Would I tell them, look, so-and-so's out to get you? And not in a dramatic way, but because usually you would check that out a little more thoroughly before you would warn a friend. So I think that's a good check. And then we talked about triggers earlier. Is this feeling from current stuff, or is this a reaction to what's happened to me in the past, what somebody has done to me in the past, what this person has a history of doing? I don't like them already. Yeah, they're up to no good. And then, have I addressed the person? Have I talked to them? Do I know this person well enough to make these assumptions? It's almost like, the evidence, but do I know this person well enough to know their intent? And then I think one of the litmus tests is this really a big deal? Is this person affecting my well-being or my relationships? You know what? If they're in that huddle talking about me, I know a lot of people who, they're talking about you. They're bragging on you. Being talked about is not necessarily a bad thing. So is their intent to harm or to affect my well-being? Being talked about is not a bad thing all the time. So I think that's a pretty good checklist. Go through that. Really analyze it before you act or do something. And I think a lot of the situations that we have now, if we can overcome these feelings, whether it's paranoia or any other, emotional feelings or negative thoughts, I think it's important. So, some of these things are, of course, you got to check, am I dealing with facts or feelings? The what ifs. What do I, again, with the facts and the evidence, what do I know to be true? And not the feelings or the emotions. That's the 24-hour rule. I woke up in a bad mood, so now I'm blah, blah, blah. Well, let's give it a little while. Maybe wait later in the day. Maybe when you have a little more perspective and a little clear-minded. Okay. Another thing is shifting that spotlight. Because paranoia often comes from overestimating how much other people are thinking about you. Don't flatter yourself. You're not the center of their world. The truth is most people are so focused on themselves, they're not really thinking about you as much as you think they are. You're not on trial here. They've got a life too. If it's a guilty conscience, okay, that's something else, but they're still shift that spotlight from you to they've got a whole life over there. It's not focused on you. They got better things to do in many situations. But also, hey, take focused action. If it's time, worry, and I've said it all, one way to reduce worry in any situation is act. If you're worried about your weight, exercise. You'll feel better immediately. If you're worried about anything, action helps reduce it. So if you're paranoid, channel that nervous energy into something useful. Organize something. Make a phone call. Talk to them. Action replaces spiraling thought. It does. Because it puts it together. I've talked about the mind and how, an idle mind is a terrible thing because you're going to fill it with something. And so whether you're dealing with this particular paranoia, it doesn't matter. get busy doing something else. That will get your mind off of it, and you'll probably forget about it. If not, you'll have more clarity in dealing with it. Get busy. Stay busy. Don't just sit around and worry and think. But you can see earlier when we talked about that, if you're isolated, if you're paranoid about who's in on it, they're all against me, you're isolated, you're skeptical, and all that, you're not busy. You're not busy. So get busy. Get busy doing something. Another great way of addressing this is, and it's almost every O-Talk, is just your circle. Your circle. Surround yourself with people you trust and positive people. One way to look at it is tighten your circle and loosen your grip. Surround yourself with people you trust who you can release your trust, your emotions, and how you feel. Yeah, Dave, that's easier said than done. I know you don't know, blah, blah. Yeah, I agree. Sometimes it's always easier said than done, but sometimes it's easier for to do this. That's why it's so important. If you can let go of trying to control everything, let go of understanding everybody and their motives and all of that thing. So if you tighten your circle, you can loosen your grip on having to control everyone and understanding their emotions and their motives. It's not your job to do all of that. And it's exhausting. And it can cause you to push people away. And the very people you push away are not the ones that are trying to hurt you. They're the ones trying to love you. So peace comes from that clarity and not trying to control everybody's emotions and motives and all of that. And then I think you can build things in to help you with this. Just some daily habits. Take that time in the morning and plan your day. Plan the good stuff. Understand, we talk about this over and over because it leads to personal productivity, which is kind of my deal. But if you need to plan things and write things down, I don't know if meditation's a deal for you, if that morning calm with your cup of coffee, if you need to look back and think, look at its successes. Any way to be, the more confident you are, the less paranoid you're going to be. Because that way, if you're more confident, it doesn't matter. I can take anything they throw at me. All right, go ahead. Have meetings about taking me down. I'm going to have meetings about the things that are important. So I think having routines or rituals that helps you build success, that will defeat all this stuff. Anchor yourself in what's working. Paranoia weakens your mind and weakens your resolve, and consistency will counteract that. That confidence, I can accomplish anything. I can. I need some help, and I can do this. That way, you're not worried about it. Going back to the being busy, that's a way to counteract a lot of this stuff. I'm too busy to worry about that. And usually, we get past a lot of this with maturity. We're not so worried about these other things. But now, when you've got, just the political situations, and I don't mean Washington, I mean the politics within a company, the politics within teenage girls, the politics within, social media. It puts it in your face, comparing yourself to other people, worrying about other people comparing you. It can be exhausting. So to protect yourself from the bad kind of paranoia, get busy. If you can't find enough to do, all right, partner with somebody. Help somebody else do something. Volunteer. Do something to fill your time. A certain amount of paranoia is very constructive, but if you're consumed with it, it is destructive, and it's going to get you. Don't worry about being perfect. You don't have to be perfect to be happy or productive. You just need to be present. And paranoia robs you of that. While you're focused on this, it eats away and tries to pull you away. When you look at the SWDs, stress, worry, and distraction, it's a distraction when you're productive. It is. It is an impediment when it's stressful. It is. And for worry, it is all consuming. Because with worry, it is about what could happen. You immediately go to the worst case scenario. So paranoia came up, and it's one of those things, I started to be clever with the name of this and do a parasite paranoia, because it attaches itself to you. And if you don't address it, it hits you with stress, worry, and distraction from 3 different ways. So keep it in check. Keep it in check. Notice the warning signs when it starts to slide on you and become more than is healthy. And then I would say, finally, if you are seeing someone else dip into this, if they're pulling back, if their conversations are more around it leads to negative, or something's out to get them, or they used to do something and now they don't, and there are reasons why. If you're close to them, ask them, everything okay? We used to do this. Why don't we do that anymore? Their answers are going to tell you, are they getting more paranoid or more reserved? So just a little bit on that. Thanks so much for joining. I appreciate it more than you know. Hit me up at david@otalks.com or dave@otalks.com. Let me know what you think about this. Let me know about the stories of how maybe you've been that way in the past and you've overcome it. Or, I don't like worst case scenarios, but if you got those to share, hit me with those too, because we need a tight circle, but we need to look out for it, just so that paranoia doesn't get into that unhealthy stage. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for hanging on. Thanks for talking with Dave.